Hello, and welcome to the Art of Lost and Found podcast. Today on the podcast, we welcome Adam Gunton. Adam is the founder of Recovered on Purpose, and he's the author of the book From Chains to Saved. His story of addiction and recovery has reached millions of people worldwide. With an entrepreneurial sales and marketing background, Adam broke sales records in 2 door-to-door industries and built a multi-million-dollar B2C marketing company with a team of 23 employees in 3 states. Now, as the founder and executive director of Recovered on Purpose, Adam lives by the affirmation, quote, "I am the example of what is possible for an addict when they recover." On the podcast, Adam shares his story from how he went from a joyful young boy with straight A's and a promising athletic career into the depths of addiction. This included an overdose that nearly took his life. Then, all the way through recovery. He shares about a profound spiritual experience that solidified his faith and connected him with a larger vision for his life that led him to creating his nonprofit, Recovered on Purpose, which now helps millions of people around the globe who struggle with addiction. We spoke about a variety of related themes, such as identity, self-trust, building community, and fully stepping into a purpose that is much bigger than just oneself. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Adam. Welcome to the Art of Lost and Found podcast, Adam. I'm so pleased to have you here today.
Brooke, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So I invited you in particular onto the podcast because of a few reasons. One, you're a masterful storyteller. And I think that those storytelling skills are such an important package to deliver meaningful messages that people can really feel a sense of resonance with and that they can remember. So that was the first part of it. The second part is I think that you're speaking to something that is very much a part of our culture, and you're speaking to an experience that all of us in one way or another have a connection to, whether we're struggling with it ourselves or somebody that we love, somebody that we care about is, and that is addiction. So speaking about addiction tends to feel taboo and uncomfortable for many people because of the cultural assumptions that we've been swimming in for perhaps forever. And I think the way that you share about your own story and how you were able to move through recovery, and now you're a huge part of transforming other people's lives who are going through that experience, is absolutely a story worth sharing. So I would love to start with a little bit of an overview for people who aren't familiar with you or your work. Where do you position yourself now, this day and age? What is your message, your mission, the work that you're spending your time doing now?
Yeah, well, my vision is a future where people are not suffering and dying hopeless from drugs and alcohol. And I believe that that is a future that we are living into. Right now, currently, there's a lot of people out there that are suffering that are living hopeless because they don't believe that there is a solution to finding recovery. And that's why they continue to overdose. They continue to suffer, and they're losing family members, and all this is due to this state of hopelessness that I believe there is a solution for. The mission that we're out to bring to the world is us in recovery, sharing our stories powerfully with those that are suffering, encouraging them to find recovery, and then sharing our stories in the school system to deter the future generations from going down the path of addiction. And those three things kind of put together make it so that we can live into that future uh, based on our community rising up ourselves. I believe the medical community has and always will have a space in the treatment of addicts and alcoholics, But in the United States alone, only 23% of people in recovery say they came to recovery through medical means, like through treatment or through therapy or something like that. 77% say they came from a recovery group. And if that's the case, then I think we need to, as a recovery community, continue to grow that type of atmosphere where we are the solution. We are the ones that are living on this mission to go out and help people that are suffering. And if we do that, then that means that we can do it in a way that we're reaching the people that don't know they need help yet. And hear me out on this, because um, if you ask people what's the number one barrier to an addict finding treatment or resources, people will say it's either insurance or money. But what they don't realize is it's actually 93% of people that can clinically be diagnosed as substance use disorder. 93% of them don't believe they have a problem. This might sound crazy to people listening right now, but I've had people message me literally, I'm taking 10 30 milligram oxycodones a day, not prescribed. Do you think I have a problem? And to us, that seems like it seems obvious, but if they don't hear a message, if they don't hear from somebody in recovery where that led them, they might not even have the awakening moment that shows them, hey, I need to take a look at this.
Yeah. I think when it comes to more of the extreme drug use, something that can actually kill you, it feels pretty shocking. But in my experience, in my world, I came up in California. uh, I often wonder about how chronic marijuana users relate to this concept of addiction, because I know plenty of people who smoke every single day, smoke weed. They're high functioning. They're not, actively in danger of overdosing or killing themselves or something like that. But the thought of going a day without smoking triggers anxiety and panic and sometimes even disassociation. So can you speak a little bit to, and I'm not sure if you have experience with that, but something that feels a little bit more culturally accepted, and oh yeah, having a beer, smoking a joint, no big deal. It's not like shooting heroin or taking oxycontin. Where do you relate your story and this world of being an addict in that particular instance, and especially with all the legalization and normalization of using, a quote unquote drug on a daily basis?
Yeah, and I appreciate this question a lot, because people actually ask me, like, especially when they first meet me and they see what I do and they see my past and stuff. They're like, "Well, can I have a glass of wine? Can I have a beer around you?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course." I'm out to help the people that are suffering. They want to quit and they can't. That's who I'm out to, like, specifically, help. When it comes to the societal norms, right? You remember those studies that showed that a glass of red wine a day helps with blood pressure and helps with blood thinning and that kind of stuff,
Sure
right?
do.
You remember,
Hmm.
did you know that those studies were done by the wine industry, and they
Does
have
not
been
surprise me.
debunked.
Hmm.
Been debunked over and over and over. There is no amount of alcohol that is good for brain function. None. Even one drink a day starts to destroy the white matter and actually makes you cognitively decline much more rapidly than if you don't. But am I gonna try to tell that to a whole society that drinking's doing that to them? No, because it might not be they might not be the type that's drinking and driving and hitting people, the kinds of stories that I have to come into and help people with, right? And with marijuana, you know, I'm and again, this is like I'm an abstinent, you know, person in recovery, right? But a study just came out by the addiction professionals that shows that people that are coming off of fentanyl or opiates or something like that, that switch to marijuana, they actually do not have a higher relapse rate into opiates. So marijuana can actually be a type of medically assisted treatment for certain kinds of addiction. I'm all for that. And people that are quote unquote high functioning marijuana users, high functioning and excellence are two different things. I'm somebody that wants to be my absolute best potential self. You cannot do that on marijuana, period. You cannot be the best you while smoking weed every day. Are you going to be out, you know, hitting people or overdosing or, being violent because of it? No. And does it help take the edge off for some people? Yes. But I'm somebody that wants to be the best me. So I would recommend, sobriety for everyone.
Hmm. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about how you got to this point. You have a lot of content out there. You have a TED Talk, you have a YouTube channel. You're very prolific in terms of the resources that you provide people just for free. I would love to understand a little bit about your origin story before drugs and alcohol or substance abuse of any kind were really on your radar or anything that you had experience with. So, can you share a little bit about the context of your earliest childhood memories? Where were you? How did you spend your time? What was your way of creative expression?
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever shared this story on a podcast, but my absolute earliest memory, I'm in a high chair and I'm crying because I'm laughing so hard, and I'm like trying to wipe the tears away as my dad is like coming in and his face comes in blurry and then comes out and then comes in and I'm like wiping away and like crying, right? Uh, and then I also have a memory that I've always been, and this is just, transparent, and I love I love the process of loving other people. I love giving. I love to, watch that person light up, more so than myself. That's what lights me up is seeing others, right? And one of my earliest memories of that as a kid, I don't remember how old I was. I don't remember, why I got the gift. I thought it was my birthday, but I don't really remember. But I was around a bunch of friends and I opened something up that I was so excited to get. It was like some kind of toy. And then I ran over and I gave it to my friend. And I just like wanted to give it to him. I was like, look, 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 it's for you, you know? And that was kind of how I I don't know. I believe that there's certain qualities of us that we have as a child that can't leave. Because then I also remember a point in my addiction where I was homeless, kicked out of the homeless shelter, staying in this abandoned house with like 15 other people in the winter when it was really cold. And I saw this girl in the corner of this part of the house, and she was asleep, but she was shivering in her sleep. And my mom had given me a blanket the Christmas before, and I went over and covered her with it, and then walked away. And I gave her that blanket, right? That kind of thing never leaves you, no matter what you're going through in life. But when I was growing up, I was, in little league, we won state every year for my football team. We went to nationals and won nationals. I was the home run derby hitter of the Little League World Series with my baseball team, and I won state wrestling in little league. Um, and I had this great kind of childhood. I was even asked to skip a grade in sixth grade, and I had to go to the high school and middle school. I had all these great things going for me, um, but then I got introduced to drugs, cocaine at 12 years old, and things started to shift a little bit, but more in the hidden part of my life because I went to Columbine High School. Most people have heard of Columbine High School, and I was the captain, the defensive captain of our state championship football team my senior year, captain of the wrestling team. but was able to put off this real good persona while I was also the party boy, and you know was able to get all the drugs for everybody, basically.
Do you have a sense of what felt attractive to you about that world? Like what was the context of when you were offered at that age, and what was the appeal for you?
Well, I was 12, and the person that gave it to me was about 21 or 22. So it was a pretty inappropriate circumstance that I probably should not have been in. And I think the appeal was I looked up to him so much. I thought that he was cool, wanted to do what he was doing, that kind of stuff. And then drugs became cool and fun to me immediately. And that's what I thought they were. Um, but as you'll hear later in the story, they ended up not being.
Spoiler alert, doesn't
Yeah.
end well, that part of the story.
Yeah.
Well, takes a dramatic turn. And
Mhm.
so I would love to invite you to share that part of the story and how you fell into addiction, what your profound moments of transformation, of realization and transformation were, and how you then made the decision to get into the work that you're doing now with Recovered on Purpose.
Yeah. Well, it was all going great, and then one sunny day, no, um, it was, I was party boy. I was also selling drugs at the time. I didn't realize I was doing harm. God's honest truth, I thought that there was I thought it was cool and fun. I thought I was providing, and people liked this stuff, right? Um, and then my freshman year of college, it was September 28th, 2008, and I'd been out drinking and partying like most nights of my freshman year of college. And I woke up to my phone ringing and vibrating down by my leg. And I swam through the soft sheets to find my hard phone with the bright screen that read 4:47 a.m. And my best friend Chucker was calling me. And I remember having the conscious choice that I could either answer the phone like I always do with, "Hey, what's up, Chuck?" Or I could answer the way I was feeling with, "Ugh, hello." And in my still drunken state, I chose the latter, to which a soft voice replied, "Hey, what's up? Why are you calling me this late?" "I was just calling to say hi." "Don't call me this late again." And I hung up on him, and he shot himself. And for nearly a decade, I was unable to share that phone call with anyone, as I bottled it down deeper and deeper with drugs and alcohol. Drugs and alcohol were no longer a way to party and have fun. Drugs and alcohol became my solution to life, which led me to finding myself homeless, kicked out of the homeless shelter. So I was super homeless, and I was unable to stop using the very drugs that were taking everything from me. We don't really need to go into the dramatic war stories of addiction. I can tell you that there's people don't talk about the traumatic things that we do to ourselves in addiction, because every single day I don't want to be sticking a needle in my arm, yet I wake up in the morning and I go pawn the last thing that I have in order to go get a drug that's taking everything from me, and then I put it in my arm crying. And that is a cycle that happens over and over and over, causing me to be powerless in my mind, to be hopeless, helpless, weak, all of this stuff over and over and over. It's basically like training my brain that, right? Um, and then at a point, and right now I'm like 220, 225, and I got to a place where I was 148 pounds in my addiction at the end. And I was found, a lot of people have seen the video that I got from the police, who found me dead from an overdose. Um, and that still wasn't enough to make me stop. You would think seeing a video of your own dead body in front of you in a courtroom, facing 5 years in prison because they found a little bit of dope on me, you would think that would be enough to make somebody stop. And for the people out there that still believe that addiction is a choice, I used for 2 more years after that, continuing to suffer, continuing to hurt, until I just had a breaking point, and I didn't want to live anymore. I couldn't kill myself. I had tried a few times, and I didn't want my life anymore. And I got to this point where there was there was a break where I was able to actually be willing to give my life up. I was able to give it up. And I started my path with God immediately. And I started a 12-step program, started working it hard, had an experience where I met Jesus face to face at International House of Pancakes while I was eating French toast with my best friend Brendan. And and I haven't used
IHOP,
since.
I hear Jesus likes it. He goes there often, I
Yeah,
hear.
how could you not? um, yeah, and with all that, I I immediately on day 25, I did my fifth step where I like confessed all my stuff to my sponsor and went through and looked for character defects, all that kind of stuff. And then on day 26, I woke up with no desire to drink or use for the first time since I was 12 years old. And there was this moment where I actually realized that something switched in my brain. I went from every single day I have to use to, oh my gosh, I'm free. And I started crying and I was like looking at my sponsor and thanking him. I was like, I don't, this is totally new to me. Right. And in that moment, after suffering for 8 years wanting to stop and not being able to, and then finding that freedom at that moment, I knew it was my purpose to help others find that. I knew because I didn't think that it exists. And I know that there's so many people out there that are suffering hopelessly that don't need to be because there is a solution.
Can you share a little bit more about the spiritual component of coming to that realization?
Yes. Um, so I was at IHOP with Brendan and we were talking. I was all excited. I had 5 days clean, which at the time was a miracle in and itself. And I got a text message from my dope dealer. And I opened it up and I just had this little flip phone and it said, "Hey, bro, just got some new stuff. It's fire. I'll give you free 20 to try out." And right when I read it, I felt something go in through the top of my head, all the way through my body. My toes were tingling, my fingers were tingling. I lost my peripheral vision. All I could see was the phone, and then my thumbs just started texting back. And it was in like King James. It was like, "Ye shall not text me again. Thou hast texted me for the last time." It was going crazy. And then at the end of the text, it said, "And fear the pain you cause your son, because your son has been blessed with the Holy Spirit." And then I feel this thing leave me. I was like, "What the heck?" I'm like reading this text message I just wrote, no idea where it came from. And I show it to Brendan. I was like, "Dude, that wasn't me. That wasn't me." He was like, "Okay." I push send. I put it in my pocket and I'm looking down at my pocket. I'm like, "Dude, I don't know what that was. I don't know who that was." And I look back up and Jesus is sitting across from me. The entire restaurant had completely disappeared. There was a bright light coming from behind him. He was smiling at me. And I immediately knew who it was, immediately knew it was happening. And in that moment, this all happens in literally less than a second. But in that moment, the only thing I can compare it to is when I used to shoot up heroin. And hear me out on this. It's as if every negative thought, every negative emotion, all the pain, all the suffering, all that stuff is able to leave me in one instant, one warm rush, right? But the difference that I felt in that moment with Jesus is as all of that stuff left, I was immediately flooded by an overwhelming sense of value, purpose, peace, identity, hope, freedom, all of that in this moment, right? And I fell with my face to the table, my hand up. I said, "Thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God." Came back up and he was gone. And I struggle in recovery. I absolutely struggle. And with all the things that I've done, I can't take full credit. I give credit to God because what I'm able to do, and I've gotten real good at this, is I ask for my day to day bread. I ask for what can I do today that's going to take me to the biggest vision you have for my life. And if I live my potential day by day, instead of putting all this pressure on myself to create all these things that I write on the whiteboard and all these visions and all the law of attraction stuff that I know how to do really well, what I've found is that he's able to make my future way bigger than all of the visions I can have for it, right? And what I find beautiful about you know, even reading, like, I read the word every single day. And what I find is that Paul even says, become all things to all people in order to save a few. That, and he's writing that because he walked into Ephesus and he sees all these different idols all over the place to all these different gods. And instead of coming in and scolding everybody and saying, hey, you got to stop worshiping them, you got to stop worshiping this and doing all this stuff, he just lets them kind of introduce their way of living all over the place until he gets an opportunity to introduce Jesus to them. He doesn't say that what they're doing is wrong, none of that stuff, right? And when I do work with people, if I'm doing 12-step work, they know what my faith is, but I let them find God of their understanding, right? Because I don't believe that that's a place where you evangelize. Recovered on Purpose, my nonprofit, is not a ministry. You know, I've talked to God real clearly about this, and there's so many people out there suffering that were wounded by the church. They never got to meet God because a church hurt them, you know? And it's my job to be a light, to be something where um, they know that hope is there, they can find recovery, and you know, spiritual principles are real great to live by. And for me, a relationship with Jesus has given me way more than I thought I wanted. We'll just say that.
And how do you connect and relate that moment in IHOP to your recovery? Because you were 5 days in at that point and your felt experience changed. But tell me a little bit more about your lived experience and how you how you integrated that spiritual experience into your daily struggle with addiction.
Yeah, and thank you so much for that question. Two-part question, or two-part answer, I guess. Number one, I don't struggle with addiction daily at all. I believe that you are able to recover once and for all and get to work on why you're here, right? I don't think about using drugs. You can drink, or I've been around, I go down to where people are shooting up dope and talk to them while they're shooting up dope, you know, loving on them. I'm not worried that I'm going to do it. And number two, and I think this is actually super pivotal for people in recovery, whether they're early in recovery or late in recovery, that moment at IHOP is gone. It's gone. Never coming back. I can't live on that experience. And what's beautiful is every single day, I'm able to live that experience. Not that specific one, but the fact that that one showed me who God is for me. I am very comfortable knowing that my future rests in His hands and not my own. Just my right now is what I need to worry about. And it gives me so much power and peace and serenity that I can just be my best right now, and He'll take care of the rest.
Can you share a little bit about your relationship to creativity and what that means for you in particular? And it's definitely not lost on me that another word that people or another phrasing people use to describe God is the creator, the ultimate creator. Because I relate a lot to what you're saying, even though I'm not a Christian, and a lot of that is not resonant for me. But the spiritual experiences of feeling connected to something larger than you that you can't explain, but it shifts something in you, and then you become more aware of or conscious of serendipity or coincidence or acts of God or whatever you want to call it. We all have some experience with touching something that is bigger than ourselves that we can't explain. And we all have experience with flowing into things just effortlessly falling into place. So can you share a little bit about your relationship to creativity and what that means for you, with a little bit of that context?
Absolutely. I've found that when I'm being creative with the purpose of helping others, there's so much vision that easily comes into play, right? Like for instance, this weekend, the entire weekend I'm working on building a 50 state website that has all the resources that help addicts that don't have, private insurance or money to pay for treatment, right? And as I'm looking at it and I'm creating this thing, I get this sense of purpose within me that as I build the system in order to build this website, then I'm just working hours and hours and hours and hours. I'm putting this stuff over here and putting this stuff over here to create this vision of connecting people out there suffering with the help they need, right? So when I that's creativity to me. It used to be, I mean, I've been a painter. I was, horrible at it and I was painting like SpongeBob SquarePants, but but I tried all these things and something that I found is is the funnest to be creative with is the way that we share our stories to impact people. Words are so powerful, right? We can cut with them, we can heal with them, all these different things, but also there's ways to share that can cut into somebody's heart in a really positive way to where they just like are in your care as you're talking to them, right? You can say something to somebody that, instantly makes them trust you. They just know that you've been there. When you have stories that you don't really share on podcasts, but when you're talking to somebody that you're trying to help and they need to hear you at a vulnerable place that's private to you and this person, and you're able to share that in a way where they open up about something they've never opened up about, right? That's creativity to me. Creativity to me is writing books. I mean, we just published another book this past week. Courtney Proper published her book, The One Brought Back, and her mission is to help women who have lost their kids in their addiction and are fighting for custody back in their recovery because she fought for 4 years in her recovery to get custody of her daughter back, and she got it. And now she's married. She's a best-selling author now. She's sold like 300 copies or something like that, and on the first day. So it's creativity is it's just how I live. Honestly, everything that I do has something to do with a vision. There's a whiteboard back here. I have it white right now because I deleted all the stuff, but I literally will play with that thing and envision how to make things work with this ultimate goal in mind about how I want to impact the planet. I want to impact the planet by making it so that people can live into a future where there's no more needless, hopeless suffering because of drugs and alcohol. And with that vision in mind, there's all kinds of creative ways to get there. Like I had to learn how to build websites with WordPress and Elementor, you
Oof.
know, yeah, yeah,
That's tough.
in about a week or 2, and then I built this whole website. I found this real cool plugin where I have a map of the United States, and I made it branded with my colors so that if you know, go over it, it's red with black for the name of the state, and then you click on it, and it takes you to that state with all the resources, and it has, and every single page has the Medicaid application link. So if they don't yet have Medicaid, they can apply right there. And then there's a box for them to connect with me and my team so that they're not just like, I'm not just plugging them in with all the resources, but I'm plugging them in with the community who would love to talk to them and help them through the whole process,
Mhm.
you know? And
Yeah, it's the
honestly, this
application of information.
exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
And people seeking recovery, you know, it's really, really hard to do it alone. It's really hard to do it alone. And that's why 77% of people are doing it in communities, recovery communities. And what this is it's a way that we can use the digital age to create a community that's all over the world. Plus, we can use the other 23% resources. We can plug you in with outpatient treatment while we talk to you on a regular basis, while we plug you in with all the 12-step fellowships or churches or whatever it is that you want in your community, but you feel like you're part of something immediately. On the front page, I tell them the goal is you that is finding this page right now. You want to find recovery, right? The goal is that you're going to be somebody in our community who's helping people where you're at a
Yeah.
year from now.
Yeah. Pay it forward. Mhm.
Yes. And if we
Yeah.
instantly inspire them to be that on day 1,
Mhm.
that's that's where we're going to keep people from relapsing. We
Yeah.
inspired them to become a part of something big.
Are you familiar with the work of James Clear or the book Atomic Habits?
Both. Yes, I've read Atomic Habits. Amazing.
Yes. So it's for those who don't know, he wrote a really incredible book about habit change. And that is not a novel topic. There are thousands and thousands, probably tens of thousands of books that have been written about this. But his book just blew them all out of the water. It's been like on the New York Times bestseller list, Amazon bestseller list for years. And the piece about his book that really stuck out to me is this piece around identity shift, right? Because so many people think that it's just a behavior. If I just if I just stop taking the drugs, I'll be fine. Or if I just stop doing this thing that's self-destructive, I'll be fine. But one, if that even has a shot of working, maybe a few days, like maybe if you're lucky. But the thing that really shifts people's behavior in a way that's sustainable and viable and leads to the type of transformation that all of us are looking for, right? Some of us, it might be around drugs and alcohol. For others, it might be around procrastination or workaholism or all of the other, issues that we're struggling with in modern society is this concept of shifting your identity. Because if you can see yourself and visualize yourself as a person who blank or a person who is blank, then it creates a different experience internally that allows you almost to inspire yourself, like to commit to this vision. So instead of saying, I'm not going to do drugs today, you say, I don't do drugs. Instead of saying, I'm going to work out today, say, I'm a person who cares about my health, right? Like you shift your identity in order to make the behavior change align with this new sense of identity. So, can you speak a little bit to what you've been able to create with Recovered on Purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this question. And real quick, I want to say something about that identity piece also. They've done studies on this for people in recovery, and they've found that the number one identity that people in recovery can attach to, not necessarily everybody can, but the one that has the highest rate of success is I am a good parent. And that's why it was so big with Courtney's book coming out, right? Because that's an identity that people live into, you know, and it actually her story shifted my belief because I always thought you've had to find recovery for yourself. Like there's not some you can't get sober for this person or that person or that person. And she straight up looked at me and she was like, I got clean for her. And then I started, like, being able to see other women on a regular basis because my perspective shifted. I was able to start listening and looking and things. There's a lot of women that are in early recovery that stay in recovery to get their kids because I am a good mother. I am a good mother. I am a good mother. And it's really, really powerful. And when it comes to, the building of this organization specifically, I remember the month after I had started it, I was with, 2 of my mentors, and we were sitting there talking, and the thing is I never wanted this to be about me. It's really important that this isn't about me, it's about the idea, it's about everybody's story, all of our stories, right? And that's why it isn't a ministry. My story is all about Jesus. I help people of all different faiths and backgrounds, you know? And what I found is that it it had to start with me. I had to do everything as if the brand the message, everything depended on me doing it in a really big way, right? I had to be the one on the stage. I had to be the one with the book. I had to do all these things in order to show others the way. And it's really interesting because, you know, I have a group of leaders, right? And we meet every Monday night. And, you know, I've watched, because of us being in this conversation together, each of them begins to identify with this idea more and more and more, right? You know that over 87% of American adults say they want to write a book, and less than 1% actually do. In my group, right, as each of them, you know, might write and publish a book, then the other two are like, "Oh, well, I wanna write a book," you know? Instead of this, like, huge esoteric big idea of like, "Oh my goodness, it's gonna take forever to do this and this with the book." It's like, I just watched her do it, and that took her, like, 4 months. I can do it, you know? And it's just being in this collective community consciousness about being towards something, right? And letting your limitations go, right? And by building it, and as of right now, it definitely, just being totally transparent, I'm working towards it not needing me, right?
Mm,
I'm
mhm.
building systems and processes and different things like that as I go, because the plan is, when I die, you know, hopefully many, many years from now, this is
Mhm.
still operating in a way where it
Yeah.
doesn't need me. You
Yeah.
know, I don't believe that I should be the head of this, because I don't believe that it's mine. I believe that
Mm,
it's God's, as well as it's the recovery communities. You know,
yeah.
it's
You're more a
ours.
steward of it. Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's nonprofit. So
Mhm.
I get to work on it as much as I, you know, possibly can. And that's why, you know, all day Saturday and Sunday, I'm like, "Grr," building a website and stuff. 'Cause it's so exciting, right? It's so exciting to be able to do something where you don't have any
Yeah.
profit motive, and you have a total, you know, an inspiration in your heart to change the world with something. You
Mhm.
know, that's what I want to do with this. I want to change the world with this idea, this organization. I can't do it alone. One of my gifts is I can actually see in others what they want to do and what their gifts are. And something that I do within my organization is I find those two things within everybody, and then I show them how to be that. Some people are really, really good at administrative work, right? They're able to manage projects and put these pieces here and these pieces here. And again, that's like a creative process. Like finding these pieces of the puzzle that love what they do, and giving them that opportunity to do it within an organization, right? I don't want to give somebody a 9 to 5 they hate. Why, how long could somebody possibly work with this organization if they hate doing it? If somebody doesn't like what they're doing, they become the norm for the team.
Yeah, it's a
Negativity is
contagion.
much
Mhm.
yeah, and negativity is much more contagious than positivity. So a negative player in the team doing stuff that they hate, everybody's gonna start hating their job very soon. So finding what people love to do and giving them the opportunity to do that, that's my process for this. And very, very soon, within the next month, I'm doing a huge push for volunteers in all 50 states, because I'm going to need them. I'm going to need chapter leaders, and then they're each going to have a team of 4 in every single state. Because once this blows up and there's people, you know, messaging in for help in every state, they've got to have somebody to go to in that state, you know? So that's it's gonna be a really fun process, finding those people, training those people, and giving them that opportunity to be who they're called to be, you know, in an organization. Again, we don't have profit motive. We just get to help addicts in a new way, you know?
What I like to ask people at this point in the podcast is more of their reflections. And I'm sensing from you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't sound like you have any regrets. It sounds like you understand that all the experiences that you've had have brought you into full alignment with your in your words, your God-given, God-directed purpose and reason for being. Is that true for you, or do you have regrets? Would you have made different decisions if you could go back and have that opportunity?
Ooh, and that's a real good question with the distinction. You closed it with a distinction because do I have regrets? No. Would I go back and change something if I could? Yes. Absolutely. I would love to have my 20s back. I would love to not be sticking a needle in my arm losing, a decade of my life, right? But what's beautiful about where I'm at now is I don't regret it because God is able to turn everything that was meant to harm me into good to save others. Period. That's what I feel right now. I don't like look at the past and be like, "Oh, darn it, I wish this and that." What is that going to do for my present and my future? Nothing. It's not going to do anything. So I use all that pain, all that suffering, all of that as a superpower to help others with. Right? It's great to have now. It's my most valuable, you know, weapon against the enemy of addiction, right? I get to use this story of all of that pain and everything for now. But if I could go back to being 12 years old where, you know, I had straight A's, I was asked to skip a grade, I was going to high school in 7th grade for the morning classes and then going to middle school for the afternoon classes. If I could go back then and, you know, not do cocaine, I might pick that just to see what else I could have done, but I love what I do. I think that I probably would have been in politics though. That's what worries me a little bit because it's innate with me. I want to change the world and I want to help on like a
Yeah.
massive scale. Um,
Yeah.
so I fear that I would have been in politics.
The people who have some regret that weighs on them still, they tend to be people who live their lives more in isolation. The people who understand that all of the things that they experience, even the hardest, worst, they would never wish that on even their worst enemy, fits into a larger story of their life. It's part of their hero's journey. And the hero's journey happens in community. It's not just the hero. You got the mentor, you got the sidekick, you got the dragon. You have all of these other characters that are part of the unfolding of the larger story. And and if you were to stop the story in the middle, before the hero slays the dragon, it's dark. It is looking bad. If that's where the story ends, then yeah, that character probably would have a lot of regret. But if you allow that story to play out and you're able to call in the support and help of resources of other people in your community, and you're able to, like you're speaking to so much, is that transformation of possibility space, right? If you can show other people, oh, you didn't think that was possible, but it is. So now that you know that, tell me about how your world has expanded. Tell me about what's next for you. Like it's an expander where you can step into that greater sense of purpose and possibility. And for many people, that does carry a spiritual component. Not everybody, but there's some mystery. There's some unexplainable, there's something bigger than me that becomes accessible and visible when you see how your struggles have then turned into wisdom that you can share with other people, and finding that community and building that community and inviting people in with that generosity of spirit and heart. Those are the people that don't have regrets. Those are the people who understand their their story is bigger than just them.
Yeah, 100%. Love it. I
Yeah.
love it. That's what it's about. That's what it's about.
Yeah. So for people who are listening to this, who are finding so much resonance in this conversation, what's the move? Where can they go? Where can they find you? What would be your recommendation about how they take the resonance that they're feeling in this moment and move forward with that?
Number 1, get time to yourself and God or whatever it is you believe in the morning. Set that time apart and do that time every single day, no matter what. Make that priority first. That's an atomic habit that will
Yeah.
change your life immediately. Getting
Yeah.
that
I
time to
can second
reflect,
that.
yeah, getting that time to reflect, to meditate, to journal, to read the spiritual things you need to read, and making that something that is you know your rock, right? That will change your life. You will get so much inspiration from that. You will find so many different things that no guru or no coach or speaker can give you, because that's coming from a place that they're not tapped into. Only you can tap into that. And then if you are someone that is struggling with addiction, or have somebody that in your life that is struggling with addiction, you can find us at recoveredonpurpose.org, Facebook Recovered on Purpose. Uh, you can message in, you can email us. I think that I have a feeling that that there's going to be people that listen to this, that most of them are not really struggling with it themselves. And I think that if you're listening to this and the addiction part isn't really resonating with you, I really think that there is something bigger for you. There's a new identity shift for you. I'm just having this sense that someone's listening to this right now, and there's an identity shift for you. There's something greater that's calling you, that needs you to come to this world. There's some kind of creative outlet, some kind of creation that you're supposed to do, that that will take you having that identity shift we were talking about earlier. Maybe it's an organization, maybe it's it could be a book. You might have something inside of you that people need to be taught, right? And I've found that a lot of the ways that we live seems normal to us, until we actually explain it to other people. Like, yeah, it's normal for me to get up and do this kind of journaling, and this kind of practice with God, and this kind of stuff that drives me, right? It seems normal until this person has never heard of something like that. you know Something that you have been through, in the process that you use to get through that could be somebody else's salvation, by hearing that. And I just have the sense that somebody's hearing this right now, that it's time. It's time to make that shift.
Beautiful. Is there anything else that feels important for you to speak to or share that we haven't already addressed before we close this time together?
I would say that, um, you know, with all the pain that is here, right? I've heard things, stories of people's lives where they basically had nothing, just great life, no real pain, no real suffering, right? And they just, they have that. And then I've heard the worst of the worst kinds of suffering. And what I've found is that no matter where you are in that spectrum, you are able to find joy. Joy exists on this planet, and it's in abundance. And there's no law about how much joy you are able to discover and have while you're here. People are trying to obtain happiness too much. You're trying to grab something that can't be grabbed. Happiness is something to pursue. And if we can really find that joy and understand what that means to us day by day by day, that's something you can choose to have. You can choose to have joy every single day, no matter where you've been or what you've been through.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Adam, for sharing so openly and vulnerably and with such clear purpose and passion and conviction around the work that you're doing, and for making the time and space and infrastructure to support so many people who are in that place of isolation and hopelessness and eroded self-trust and all of the things that keep us stuck. It's clear that you are a lighthouse for so many people who are lost in the choppy waters at sea. And like I said at the beginning, we all have a connection to this, whether it's our own struggles with addiction or somebody that we love. And just a deep, deep, heartfelt gratitude for you and the work that you're doing and the community that you're building so that people can remember their joy and through joy regain their sense of hopefulness because it's so important.
Thank you so much, Brooke, for saying that. It means a lot to me. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Art of Lost and Found podcast. I hope that you are feeling inspired and empowered to go forth and explore your curiosity and creativity. As always, if you want any more information about any of our guests or the show notes or anything we discussed on today's episode, you can head over to www.brookeeston.com/podcast. Thank you so much and looking forward to seeing you in the next episode.